everybody, you're listening to The Maine Morgue. I am your host, Jamie Santamore. Before I start this week's show, I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to everybody that's listened to episode 1, to anybody that has supported me through this process, and I'm still learning how to do a podcast. The one major complaint I got from people over the past week was that episode 1 was too short. So I've come up with several different topics that I want to talk about this week. I think there's 10, and I'm going to just jump right in right now with talking about appreciating bad films and horror. And I get asked all the time, what I think a bad horror film is and how I react to watching a quote-unquote bad horror movie. I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first being Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which if you watch that movie by itself is a brilliant movie. And I dislike fans that say that it's a horrible movie because it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. You have to understand, when Halloween 3 rolled around, they wanted to make Halloween an anthology series, where each Halloween movie from 3 on would tackle a different superstition about Halloween, much like they did in Trick or Treat many years later. Like I said, Season of the Witch is an incredible movie if you sit down and actually watch it and don't think about it being Halloween 3. That was their major flaw. They called it Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Very bad mistake. And it killed the movie for a lot of people. And of course, as we all know, Halloween 4 saw the return of Michael Myers and everything was fine. But Season of the Witch had a good story, had good actors, and it was a really good story, something that you hadn't seen really. My next example is Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. It was a good film, had a lot of good points to it. However, they made the fatal mistake that Halloween 3 made. Halloween 3 took Michael Myers out of the story, and Friday the 13th, Part 5 fell into the same trap where they took Jason Voorhees out of the story. They had the fake Jason, which, works for what they did with it, but kind of took away from the movie for most hardcore Friday the 13th fans. The acting was good, the kills were good, but it lacked Jason, and that's what killed it for most fans. The final example I'm going to give, I want to talk a little bit about Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. To me, that was an interesting film in the series, but it wasn't even called Friday the 13th, Part 9. It was called Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. So that's an automatic strike against it, right? And they only followed the original film and parts of Part 2, which made no sense at all. They tried again to take Jason away from Camp Crystal Lake and Camp Blood and all that, and it worked, sort of. I didn't like the body swapping, it was dumb, but I enjoyed the acting in the movie, and I enjoyed the special effects. So, the point I'm trying to make is, even when you're watching a bad horror movie, try to find something good in it, whether it's an actor, or the story, or the special effects, or the makeup, or the action sequences. Always look for something positive, even in a bad movie, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There are gems in a lot of films that are considered quote-unquote horrible films. That's all I'm saying. So I'm going to take a short break, and I'll be back with segment 2. I'm back, and segment 2 this week is going to be about too many sequels in film. Not just horror, but other genres as well. And I get asked all the time if there will be a Sins of Man 4. And the quick answer to that question is no. Because I do think there are too many sequels in horror. But it's bad for a franchise, and bad for the genre in general. I never say never in this line of work, and I would consider doing Sins of Man 4 if the story was good, and most importantly, if it was the start of a new trilogy. I wouldn't do a Sins of Man 4 film just for the sake of putting a fourth one out. I would want it to be the gateway to a new trilogy. My first horror script that I wrote, Wicked Carnival, was written as a one-off with no sequel ever intended. It was just going to be a one-off film and be done with it. I was halfway through writing it when I started thinking about, well, do I want a sequel or do I just want to end it in one movie? And I wanted my first film to be a one-off, no pressure for a sequel. If people liked it, I would do a sequel. Then I started writing Sins of Man, and that was originally intended to be a one-off. About halfway through writing Sins of Man, I started thinking about how I could write a sequel. And so, as I was writing Sins of Man, I started writing Sins of Man 2. Or notes for Sins of Man 2. I finished Sins of Man, started working on Sins of Man 2. About halfway through that, I said, you know, if I do A, B, and C, I can wrap this up with a pretty little bow in a trilogy. So again, I started making notes. Note-taking is probably my least favorite part of writing. I will come right out and say that. So I got done writing Sins of Man 2 and started writing Sins of Man 3 and finished that. And in less than 30 days, I had first drafts for a Sins of Man trilogy, which I thought was cool, and I knew right then that that was the launching pad for Wicked Carnival Productions. You know, I mean, let's think about all the sequels in horror, and I'm only going to talk about horror for this part. Friday the 13th, what is it, 10 films in 1 week reboot? Is it 10 films? Yeah, okay, 10 films, his name is Jason, and the reboot, so 12 films. Nightmare on Elm Street has 7 films, and the reboot. Halloween has 8 films, a reboot, and a sequel to the reboot. Child's Play has 5 films and a long-awaited sequel/prequel. Scream has the original trilogy and a sequel, which was supposed to be for a new trilogy, but I don't think that's going to happen. So now let's switch gears and talk about other genres. Let's take action, for example. I love Terminator and T2. Those films were phenomenal. But after that, I was just like, are you seriously making another Terminator movie? The story just went all over the place after T2. It became confusing for many folks. Me included, I was confused. I just watched Terminator Genesis. And I just sat there and watched it, and I was like, what are they talking about? And it just confused me. Another series, Die Hard. I absolutely love Die Hard. The original movie, I love that movie. The sequel was good. Part 3 was good. Part 4, I was like, but it was good. I liked the story. And then A Good Day to Die Hard came out, and I was like, okay, enough is enough already. Great action sequences, great explosions, great fight scenes, good story, but when is enough is my question. So to wrap this segment up nicely, why do you think Hollywood never comes out with anything new? Because the classics of the 80s and 90s still work to make money with their reboots and their sequels. So why do they need to make anything new? Indie filmmakers like myself are working to create new ideas, new killers, and new franchises for fans, because Hollywood is just going to make remakes and reboots and reimaginings and the sequels to all of those and never give you anything new because they don't want to put millions of dollars into an unproven commodity. That's what it boils down to. So I'm going to take a short little break, and I'm going to be back with a little segment about movies that I've recently seen and ones that I'm excited to see upon their release. So stay tuned. You're listening to The Maine Morgue. Welcome back. In this segment, I'm going to talk about some movies that I've recently seen and a few that I'm very excited to see upon their release. I'm going to start off by telling you guys that I absolutely loved Batman v Superman. And without giving away any spoilers, I'm going to say that the ending shocked me, because I was like, wow, that was awesome. And I'm a huge superhero movie fan, as well as TV series fan. My current favorites, I would have to say, are The Flash and Arrow. I can't wait to see Suicide Squad. I can't wait to see Captain America Civil War. And I should also tell you guys that no, I haven't seen Civil War yet. And I waited for Batman v Superman to become available on digital. I don't go to movies a lot, even horror movies. I don't go to the theaters a lot. Mainly because I don't like being around a crowd of people when I watch a movie. Because people in a movie theater just really irritate me. Because when I come in to watch a movie, I want to watch the movie. I don't want any distractions. So I can enjoy the experience. So I usually wait for them to come out on digital or Blu-ray DVD, and I watch them on my big screen TV at home because it's just more comfortable. And you know, in terms of superhero movies, I like the characters for the most part, and the studios and the networks are smart enough to know that not everybody that watches their shows and their films are diehard comic fans. They write them in a way where a novice fan can sit down and watch an episode of The Flash, or the episode of Arrow, or an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or whatever it happens to be, or Gotham even, and without knowing anything, still enjoy the viewing experience. Because they write them in a way that's comprehensive to everybody, from novice fans to comic book geeks. I have nothing against you folks that read the comic books. I, however, don't. I collect older comic books. Like, I have all of the little Hawkeye miniseries. I believe there were 3, including the new, or newest Ultimate Hawkeye series. I think there were 4 books. And there were 4 books in each series. There are 3 that I know of. And I have all of them, because Hawkeye is my favorite Avenger. I also have Joker issue number 1. I also have Wolverine issue number 1. And it's weird because I don't collect comic books, but I collect the older ones, you know, pick and choose, because I like the artwork of years gone by. Again, not that there's anything wrong with the artwork of today's comic books, because there isn't. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, for me, is leaps and bounds ahead of DC at this point, because they've had, what, over a dozen movies already, or close to it. And really, the DC Cinematic Universe kicked off with Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, followed by Man of Steel, and now Batman v Superman, where they've relaunched Batman with Ben Affleck, who I thought did an amazing job as Batman. And I was a little skeptical about that. Actually, no, I was very skeptical about that, I'll be honest. But, you know, with the success of Batman v Superman and the upcoming Suicide Squad movie, which comes out, I believe, in 2 weeks on I think it's August 5th, I think they're going to close the gap with Marvel. I really do. And Justice League coming up, I think that's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to see the Aquaman movie, because as a kid, I was a huge Aquaman fan, as well as The Flash. The only thing that bugs me about the Aquaman movie is that James Wan is directing, and he's mainly a horror guy. So I'm kind of leery about that, but as long as it's a good story and I can believe in Aquaman, I'm good with it. That's going to wrap up this segment of the show. Stay tuned when we come back, or when I come back. I will be talking about some of the adventures and misadventures that we had on set this weekend with Sins of Man 2 Vengeance. You're listening to The Maine Morgue, and I'll be right back. I'm back. I thank everybody for listening this far into the podcast. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and this rings so very true on a movie set, as frequently things change for any number of reasons. We had folks that couldn't get to set this weekend, and we were filming the finale of the movie. So everything that was written in the script that I worked very hard on went out the window. And we all had to craft a new ending, which with the cast members that we had, we came up with something that works on many levels and pushes our story forward into Sins of Man 3 Tribulation. We crafted a few cool ideas out of seemingly nothing. And I think in many ways the finale that we shot Saturday night into very early Sunday morning is better than the one that I wrote in the script originally. Excuse me. I had to create several elements of the movie on the fly on set, and actually Sherry Collins and I, Sherry Collins is a name actress that we brought in for Sins of Man 2 Vengeance. You can actually catch her. She's an extra in Ghostbusters, which is currently in theaters. Little shameless plug there for Ghostbusters and my girl Sherry Collins. We changed her scene via Facebook Messenger in the days leading up to her shoot, and came up with a way for her character to show her fun side. And I'm sure for her scene, both her and I are going to get a shit ton of hate mail, but I'm okay with that. You know, when you're on set and things get hectic, it's very easy to say, you know what, this is way too much for me, somebody else figure it out. And I thank God that I have somebody that I can turn to and say, okay, what are we going to do? My executive producer, Chris Fife, and I work very well together in that I can write the script and show him with words on a page what I want on screen, and he makes it happen. I'm great at the writing part, not so much at the director part. Get into that a little bit more in a segment coming up on this episode. But necessity really is the mother of invention. You don't really want to invent anything on the fly, but in filmmaking, I guarantee you it happens even in big budget movies. Something doesn't work, something doesn't go right, and you have to change things. The difference between a Hollywood movie set and an independent film set, at least in my opinion, is it's myself and my executive producer slash cameraman slash jack of all trades who have to come up with the stuff on the fly. I don't have other writers, grips, a bunch of cameramen, a bunch of production assistants that I can say, okay, what should we do here? I have one person. And I also have a cast of cast members who, thankfully, we all had a brainstorming session and we came up with something on the fly that we could do in the environment we were in, and we made it work. So, again, if you've never done this, or never done a play or anything, it's very difficult, I think, to understand the stuff that we go through on a week-to-week basis on set every week. And for people that don't know, these are long ass days. I mean, we get to set at 11 and we shoot until 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock the next morning because we love what we do. And believe me, nobody got paid on this movie, not even me. Okay, and I'm the writer-director. It's amazing what you can do when you get a group of people together that all want the project to succeed just as much, if not more, than you do as the writer, director, producer, etc. I'm going to wrap this little segment up, by saying that I hope you fans really enjoy Sins of Man 2 Vengeance, which will be released on DVD on Halloween and will hopefully be available on our website, wickedcarnivalproductions.com, as well as bullmoose.com for fans in the U.S. I'm going to take a quick break. In the next segment, I'm going to talk about how writing a script is very different from directing a movie. Stay tuned. I'll be right back, and you are listening to The Maine Morgue. You're listening to The Maine Morgue. Welcome back. Once again, my name is Jamie Sandmore. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm going to talk a little bit about my favorite horror franchises and some of my favorite films within each franchise, because I get this question a lot. So here are my favorite franchises in order. Number 1 is a tie between Halloween and Scream, because they are the films that influenced me the most as a writer. John Carpenter's Halloween is the greatest film of all time in any genre, in my opinion. That film is the reason I fell in love with slasher flicks overall. That was the first horror movie I ever saw. And Scream is the reason that I fell back in love with slashers in the mid-90s. Number 2 on my list is Friday the 13th, because the first film was an incredible journey, and another one of the films that's one of the best in the genre even today, and it still holds up to anything that has been produced in the last 15 years, in my opinion. I also like Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Part 7, The New Blood, was one of my absolute favorite movies because I loved the Carrie versus Jason angle that they did. I love Jason Takes Manhattan, believe it or not. I thought that was a really cool film, a good idea. And, of course, Jason X was one of my favorites because they took Jason away from Camp Blood and took him to space, and I thought it was both funny, entertaining, and scary at times. Number 3 on the list would be A Nightmare on Elm Street. My favorite film in that series being the original from 1984. And I also liked A New Nightmare because I thought it was a cool idea at the time it was made and released for them to do that. Number 4, rounding out the list, is Child's Play. I have to say I like the original one and the most recent one, Curse of Chucky, because it was a nice way to tie everything together, going all the way back to before Child's Play. Now, you'll notice that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not on that list. Not that I dislike those films, but in all honesty, I have only seen the first one, parts of the second one, and I believe I've seen all of the reboots of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, excuse me. I did, however, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, I believe it was, where it turns out that the girl has inherited the house, but she has to take care of Leatherface. I think it was the most recent one. And I am very much looking forward to Leatherface, which I believe comes out in 2017 or 2018. So that does look interesting. I'm also looking forward to the new Friday the 13th movie, as well as the new Halloween movie, which is going to be executive produced by John Carpenter, who is returning to the series after all these years. So those are my favorite horror franchises and my favorite films in each franchise. If you guys would like me to do a more in-depth podcast about certain films or certain franchises, feel free to hit me up with an email, themainemorgue@gmail.com, or for any of the things you want me to talk about, topic ideas. You can just drop me a quick email, send me a quick tweet at themainemorgue. I'm going to take a short little break, and in my next segment, I'm going to describe indie filmmaking. And I think you guys, even people that aren't in the business of making indie films, I think you guys will enjoy it. So stay tuned. You're listening to The Maine Morgue. Welcome back. In this segment, I'd like to talk a little bit about indie filmmaking and describing it in my own words. I was asked just yesterday how I would describe my job to others that may not have any idea what goes into it. And the best thing I can come up with in terms of what happens on set is what I call controlled chaos. And like I talked about earlier, the events of this weekend's shoot are a prime example of controlled chaos. Even when you have a solid plan for shooting, there are always things that pop up and change the course of the day's shoot. And things get hectic very, very, very quickly and you don't have a chance to end the chaos. You simply control the chaos long enough to get through the day. And that's the truth. There's always chaos on set. People having to change their costumes, people forgetting their lines, people learning their lines, changing the lines because a person didn't show up or a person's late, or there could be a million different things. Maybe an actor is gonna be late. We already shot scenes that they were supposed to be in, but we changed them because they never called us and told us they were gonna be late. There's just a million and one things that could possibly go wrong. That's just the way it is. And I don't know if it's that way with other people. Sherry Collins, who I mentioned in a previous segment, has told me that those things happen on just about every set she's on, even the ones that are done by major Hollywood studios. Shit happens, and it's controlled chaos because it's my job as the director and Chris's job as the executive producer to always make sure that we control the chaos on a minute-to-minute basis. And you have, 13 or 14 actors on your set who might not get along. We had an incident, our third or fourth weekend of shooting, where two cast members butted heads. And again, it's my job, it's Chris's job to kind of smooth that over so we don't have problems moving forward. Now, I'm not going to talk about them directly by name, but I pulled each of them aside, found out what happened, and I said, just stay away from each other unless you're acting on screen together. Other than that, you guys don't have to communicate. It's that simple. And a woman I worked with on Sins of Man, Rise of Mortis told me, as the director, it's a lot like dealing with children. And I didn't believe her at first. And when incidences like that happen, I see what she means and what she meant when she told me that. And from last year to this year, I have learned so much about being a writer, director, producer, actor, makeup effects artist, that it helps everything I've learned in the past year, and like everything I learned on this set, I'll take to Sins of Man 3 Tribulation next year. And I'm hoping that as time goes on, I learn from all these little things that happen. How to be a better writer, how to be a better director, how to be a better person on set. And a beacon of light and hope for my cast members, so when things get tense, we don't go off course. So, in all of this controlled chaos, I think back to the writing process, which is me sitting at my desk writing the script. I have no issues. I don't have anybody else I talk to. I pretty much write the stuff myself. I might get ideas from cast members what their character might do in a certain situation, because I like to get their input. I might not use their input, but I like to get their thought process on who they think their character is. But once it goes from writing to on set, that's when all the variables come in. And like I said, the chaos becomes less and less if you control it. And there's always ways to get out of chaos or a big chaotic situation by breaking it down. You never want the chaos to take over the set completely. I mean, like this past weekend, we had somebody that didn't show up on Saturday, so that changed everything. We took the script and we tossed it out the window, and we came up with something. But once that happened, once we knew that that person wasn't coming to set, everybody got in a circle and we had a brainstorming session, and it took us maybe 25 minutes to come up with an entirely different ending for probably the last 15 to 20 minutes of the movie. And it was the core group of creative people. We were all there. We all sat around the table. We actually were doing this at dinner. So quick shout out to Cumberland House of Pizza for housing us and feeding us for that little meeting. The food there is excellent. So yeah, we took, 25 minutes, maybe a half hour, and hammered it out. We controlled the chaos. So that's my thoughts on what independent filmmaking is and how difficult it is. And it is very difficult to go from writer to director to actor, because I play a part in both Rise of Mortis and Vengeance. And the part that I play was pivotal in part 1, Rise of Mortis, scaled back in Vengeance, and I'm either going to scale it back even more in Tribulation or take my character out completely. I haven't decided yet, because I want to focus on writing and or directing, and I don't want to have to worry about taking my director hat off and shooting scenes for the movie. I'm going to take a short little break. When I come back, I'll talk a little bit about fans being overly critical of movies, TVs, and other things. You're listening to The Maine Morgue. I'll be right back, folks. Welcome back. You're listening to The Maine Morgue. Before I get into talking about how fans are overly critical of movies and TVs in this day and age, I want to give another quick little shout out to Bridgeton House of Pizza, who has fed us amazingly while we've been shooting here in Bridgeton. Their staff is amazing. The food is incredible. If you're in the Lake Region area of Maine, stop into Bridgeton House of Pizza. Once again, the food is amazing. The staff is awesome. So check out Bridgeton House of Pizza if you're in the area. Being overcritical of movies and TV is something that it even bothered me before I became a filmmaker. And we're all guilty of this from time to time. Even me. But there are folks that all they do is complain about movies, TV, music, video games, etc., on and on. What's the point? Is the point of you writing a blog or trashing a movie on IMDb to make your voice heard, or are you simply just jumping on the bandwagon like everybody else? And that's one thing different between me and other people. I don't let other people's opinions shape mine, especially when it comes to movies. Because as a filmmaker, I know how hard it is to make a movie from nothing. Now think about this for a second. A movie starts as a thought that quickly forms into several more thoughts. Those thoughts eventually form an idea. That idea becomes an outline, which becomes a script, which will go through countless rewrites until you start shooting the movie. And when the movie is finished and released, your thought, that one little simple thought you had, is now a movie. You know, and there have been several movies that friends and fans alike have said, oh, you should check this out, it was good, the story was good, it had great acting, etc. One of those movies was Insidious, which I didn't like very much at all. But like I said, I see some good in it because the story was good and it had great acting and so forth. The story worked, and that's what I took away from the film. Another one that was highly recommended to me because I'm a Danielle Harris fan was the film titled Cyrus. I found it to be good but very predictable. Another one that sticks out in my mind is Paranormal Activity. Now keep in mind, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe that Paranormal Activity movies were any good at all. Other than, you know, some of the acting was good, some of the responses were good, the visual effects were good. But Paranormal Activity, for my money, was one jump scare after another for the entire runtime of the movie, which, you know, a 5-year-old could do that. A 5-year-old can tie a string to a doorknob and pull it shut. I mean, and I'm not discrediting the movie because it made millions, and that's good for the people that made it. But I don't see the point of it. Some of the acting was good, like I said, but it's just not my cup of tea. And people raved about that movie. And I have friends that are actually in the paranormal community. They're in paranormal investigation stuff. They have TV shows. My friend Eric Perry out of Manchester, New Hampshire, has Haunted Productions, which has made several deals out in Hollywood. They have several teams nationwide that do paranormal activity stuff, ghost hunts, and that kind of stuff. And he's very good at what he does. I'm not discrediting him in any way, shape, or form, or anybody that does that for a living. However, I'm just saying it doesn't work for me. I wouldn't go pay money to go on a ghost hunt or on a paranormal investigation because I don't find it interesting. I love Eric. Eric is like family to me. Eric has helped me greatly in the very early beginning stages of my career, and I can never say thank you enough to him. So Eric, if you listen to this, brother, I don't mean this as an insult or an attack on you or anybody in the paranormal field. It doesn't work for me. The movies made millions, the TV shows are doing great all over television. It's just not my cup of tea. And I'm sure if I watched some of his content on Amazon, I would probably enjoy it because it's Eric and I'm sure he's hilarious. But it's just, like I said, it's not my thing. Fans and friends who say, hey, watch this movie, 9 times out of 10, I don't, because I don't want to. I like slashers. Slashers are my thing. I could watch slasher movies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's my thing. I don't watch ghost movies. I don't watch a lot of monster movies outside of like Godzilla, King Kong, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, the classics. I don't watch a lot of sci-fi. And this weekend, actually, I'll tell you a little funny story. Chris Fife, who is a huge Star Trek fan, corrected me because I call it Star Trek with an A, not an E. And he goes, it's Trek, Star Trek. And finally, I'm just like, dude, I don't care, okay? So, for Chris, I will say it's Star Trek. I watched them when I was a kid. I watched the original series when I was a kid. I liked it when I was a kid. But now, I'm more into horror. I could probably watch the new one, and I think I saw the first new Star Trek movie with, Chris... Is it Chris Pines or Chris Pike? I can't remember. Anyways, I know I've seen that one. And I want to see the new one. It actually looks good. So I might see the middle one just so I'm caught up. But I'm trying to get into it because I actually have a sci-fi movie on the release schedule that Chris and I are working on together. So, you know, I try not to be overly critical of movies. And yes, I do movie reviews, but if you listen to my movie reviews, I don't trash movies intentionally. And I don't trash them where they don't deserve it. So that's going to wrap up this segment. I'll be back with an interesting little segment, and it's going to be a very short one, describing the Mortis character. Welcome back. You're listening to the Maine Morgue. Someone asked me via email if I could describe the Mortis character on my next podcast. So I thought about it for a day or two, and this is how I would describe Mortis to you. If you had never seen Sins of Anne, Rise of Mortis, never heard about it or anything, Mortis has suffered a great loss because of the quote-unquote sins of man. He becomes obsessed with people paying for their sins. Mortis believes that anyone caught committing one of the 7 deadly sins should be punished accordingly. He feels that people get away with far too much in today's day and age, and if justice can't be served by the law, then Mortis figures to deliver justice to those who have done wrong. That's Mortis in a nutshell. I could go into further detail, but then why would you watch the movie? So if you want to know what I mean, feel free to check out Sins of Man Rise of Mortis, which is available at bullmoose.com for fans in the United States, or you can buy it at Bull Moose music stores throughout the state of Maine. If you're interested in ordering it and you live overseas, you can contact me via email, wickedcarnivalproductions@gmail.com, and we can work out shipping arrangements via PayPal. I do have a PayPal account, so if you're interested in ordering the movie, get in touch with me and I'll see what we can work out. That was a very short segment, and I'm gonna wrap the show up here pretty soon. I'll be right back with the topic, can anyone make a movie? You're listening to The Maine Morgue, and I'll be right back, folks. Welcome back. I often get asked, and it's probably 10 times a day via email, the question, so, can anyone make a movie? Now, the short answer to this question is yes. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can make a movie. Or, anything on the creative platform. Music, art, comic books, writing a book, painting, anything. You can do anything that you set your mind to, and never let anyone tell you that you can't do something. Because what that boils down to, ladies and gentlemen, is people get pissed off, jealous, if you're out there trying to live your dream and they're stuck on their couch watching baseball or whatever. People in this world, and even in this industry, don't want to see anybody succeed faster than they do. And that's just a harsh reality. I, on the other hand, am very willing to help people. Danielle Buck, who is in Sins of Man 2 Vengeance, we have been friends since right before Rise of Mortis was released on DVD. And she asked me if she could be in Sins of Man 2. And I invited her to an audition. Now keep in mind, I only knew her from Facebook. And she came to the audition and blew Chris and I away, and we cast her. All her life she's wanted to be in a horror movie. She wants to write horror movies. She wants to act in them. She wants to learn to do makeup. She's very passionate about being in a movie, and those are the types of people that I want to help. Those are the types of people that I will cast in a role, or say, hey, do you want to come down and be a production assistant? You can learn how the camera works, learn how we frame things, etc. And I'll help anybody that has the passion to do something on a creative level. Getting back to, can anybody make a movie? There are a few things that you need to make movies. Excuse me. If you're going to write your own scripts, a little talent as a writer is very important. If you can write a good story with good characters, and a story that has twists and turns, and be able to make the audience care for your characters, then you're on the right track. You need to surround yourself with like-minded people. Like I said earlier in the podcast, you want to surround yourself with people that want the project to succeed just as much, if not more, than you do. The right group of people will go through hell and back to make sure that the project gets finished. And that was very evident to me both on Rise of Mortis and on Vengeance. We had all kinds of shit thrown at us at all different stages of pre-production, production, post-production on Rise of Mortis, and we all pulled together and we all got it done. Vengeance was the same way. And, I say all the time that if I can make a movie, anyone can make a movie. And I'm not selling myself short. I'm not talking down about myself in any way. Like I said earlier, that's just the truth. There aren't a lot of things that I'm truly good at in this world. Writing screenplays is one of them, and I'm very proud to say that I write my own screenplays. I write my own scripts. I write the outlines. I do all that stuff. And yes, I've directed the first 2 movies in the trilogy. Because I write compelling stories with characters that you can care about. And even if you care about the character only long enough to watch them get brutally murdered because they're annoying as hell, I've done my job as a writer because you care about that character. You feel something for that character. I mean, really, how I work things out, and I'll give it to you really quickly. I create the killer and the story and his story first. Then the world that the killer lives in, and the world that the characters live in. Then I create the final girl. Because, I mean, obviously she's the most important character next to the killer, right? Then I create her circle of friends, or as I call them, the victim pool. Then I move into crafting each character's death scene. After I do that, I fill in the blanks between the death scenes, and bam, I've got an outline. After the outline is written, I start writing a very, very, very rough draft of the script. And I usually go through between 5 and 10, maybe sometimes 12 rewrites to have a polished, finished / shooting script. So when I say if I can make a movie, anybody can make a movie, it's true. If you have an iPhone, you can make a movie, for God's sake. Now, money for paying for things, that's a lot more tricky. Crowdfunding does not work if you don't have friends and family that are willing to donate a chunk of money to you before you start asking other people, for money. If you don't have the money to pay for the boosters that crowdfunding hits you with right off the bat after you've started your campaign, I guarantee you within 24 hours of you launching your crowdfunding campaign, you will get at least a dozen emails or comments on your campaign about people wanting to sell you on paying $89 to get more backers, $199 to get more backers, and so forth and so on. So unless you have money to do that, crowdfunding is a waste of time. And money. Because you're wasting electricity by being online promoting your campaign, which is going to go nowhere. I've had 5 crowdfunding campaign attempts, and none of them have worked. So it's best to find people that are willing to help you financially outside of crowdfunding to make sure you have the bare essentials to make a movie. We made, just on what I spent for Rise of Mortis, the first film, roughly $700, and most of that came from what little crowdfunding I could do and out of my own personal bank account. I still owe my wife money, and here we are over a year later. Yeah, it's a rough thing when you owe your wife money. I'll be honest and tell you that. So don't do that. If you want to make movies and money is an issue, go cheap. Make your own blood. Make your own weapons. If you have friends that have houses or land or cars, clothes, props that they're willing to let you use, go that way. If you have a thrift store in your town or your city, go there for costumes. Buy stuff on the cheap at Goodwill. You know, and making films is hard. I'm not going to say that it's easy, but if you are around like-minded people, it becomes a lot easier because they will sacrifice just as much as you are because they want the project to succeed. You know, I'll tell you a quick story. I had a lot of people, when I decided to do Sins of Man, Rise of Mortis, tell me that I couldn't do it, that I was going to fail, that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't a good enough writer, and on and on and on. And there is absolutely nothing more gratifying than going to the DVD release party, sitting at the table with Chris and a couple of my actors. We were doing a meet and greet, and one of those naysayers having to come up to the table holding the DVD that they just purchased and ask you to sign it. And you take it out of the little thing, you take it out of the case, you put it on the table, and you're signing it with the biggest shit-eating grin you've ever had on your face in your entire life, because by signing this DVD for this person, you're proving them wrong. And, you know, that might sound conceited, but it's really not. You know, you're going to have naysayers. Not everybody's going to love your idea. And people are going to try to discourage you. If I could give advice to anybody out there that's trying to create something, whether it be movies, music, TV, web series, comic books, art, paintings, whatever, nobody believes in you more than you believe in yourself. You are your own number one fan. The flip side of that is you should be your own worst critic too. However, you're going to have more than enough critics, more than enough naysayers, so believe in yourself when nobody else does. And you get the satisfaction of being able to say at the end of it, when you have the finished product, when you have the finished movie, painting, comic book, CD, whatever it happens to be in your hand, you can look at it and say, I did it, and I did it because I believed in myself. Never let anybody tell you that you can't do something, because you can if you believe you can. I'll wrap this up by saying thank you for listening to The Maine Morgue. I really enjoy doing these podcasts. I really enjoy talking to people and getting my thoughts and ideas out there and conveying my passion for independent film out to you guys and ladies. Please send in your questions, comments, concerns, topic ideas. I'll talk about what you guys want me to talk about. I appreciate you all for listening to me and listening to me talk about all the things that I'm passionate about. I'll be back next week with another episode of The Maine Morgue. Take care, everybody. Stay humble, stay hungry.